Shalom and welcome again to Secrets of Meaning, the podcast and TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. I thank you very much for joining us today in what I hope will be a very, very interesting and timely conversation with our guest today, Laurie Orlov, coming to us from beautiful Florida. Laurie is an expert in the area of technology and the use of technology in aging, an award winner, author, blogger, etc. And we'll find out about how to get in touch with her as we go through the interview. But Laurie, welcome to Jewish Sacred Aging. Welcome to Secrets of Meaning. And I am very, very much looking forward to speaking with you about your involvement and your expertise and your engagement in technology and aging. And I guess the obvious question is, how in the world did you get into this?
So actually, I was a music major in college, which is where I met one of your congregants, Jack Weinberg, who I've known since then. I think he's a congregant.
Yes. No. Well, I was Israel. I went to do this full time, but we're in touch a lot. He's a great guy. He and Sharon, great
I went
people.
to college with Jack. I was a music major.
Oh, okay.
And I wandered around trying to find a way to make a living after college. And I got a job. I was told to get a job at IBM that required really no computer expertise, no technology skills whatsoever. And I needed a job. So I went to work for IBM and they trained me in computer operations. And then I changed jobs and found another company that trained me on how to be a computer programmer. And that's how I got in. That was actually my first job in what it became a career. I was in the technology field now since really a long time. We won't get into how long. About 15 years ago, I left my job. At that time, I was an analyst at Forrester Research in Cambridge, Mass. And I left my job and was wandering around trying to figure out what to do. And I had an aging mother. And pretty much everybody in this field has had an aging mother or an aging parent or an aging relative, which is why they're in it in the first place. And what I was struck by was how clueless I was about how to care properly for my mother. And I said, well, I got to learn something. So I got a graduate certificate in geriatric care management. And I learned quite a bit of it in that. And I discovered that the industry of technology for older adults did not have an analyst. That is a person who tracks the market. And a friend of mine encouraged me to become that analyst. So 15 years ago, I launched this business as the analyst for technology for older adults. And that's what I did. And I've been doing that ever since. It is a business. I have clients. I write reports. I write custom stuff for companies. Like I said, I've been doing it for 15 years. It is a business that is changing every year. And your questions about robots and so forth are timely because there's always changes. So I'll leave my background. That's enough of my background. Which part of this would you like to go down first?
No. When you say you're an analyst, walk me through a little bit about what that means in the perspective of what you do in technology and aging. You're an analyst. Are you advising tech companies on how to meet this market?
I advise tech companies, nonprofits, startup companies, anybody in the sort of business to business way of thinking about this that is interested in this market. And what an analyst is a person or a business, in fact, that tracks a market, that is follows the changes, publishes guidance about what the changes are, and advises companies on how they should react and meet those changes.
So my perception, given the work that we do in Jewish Sacred Aging, is that this is the beginning of a whole explosion of opportunities for companies to tap into the aging market, which is expanding. I mean, look, not only in the American community, but especially in the Jewish community, when 50% of the American Jewish community, according to the last Pew study of last year, of 2020, were over the age of 50. So we know our community is growing. The population of the United States of America is aging. So there seems to be then this opportunity in technology, but there's a belief. Is it a myth that us older people really don't like technology, and we don't want any? We're just kind of frightened of it. Yet more and more of my contemporaries are very, very much at home with this machine here. Very, very much myth or fact.
And in fact, what happened in some ways, adoption of devices like you're holding has been driven by the industry of companies, for example, who supply phones. They stopped supplying the old type of phone, the clamshell phone.
The flip phone.
That's one small factor. A bigger factor is the type of phone you have enables you to have a chat with a family member on your phone with a picture, with an image. And you can look at websites, you can get advice, you can do all kinds of things that you never could do on the other devices. So most older adults now have gotten with the program. They have smartphones. The majority have smartphones now. But they're not comfortable. So that's the other problem is you've got a rise in adoption of technology, but a concern that we're not doing it quite right. And AARP just published a recent study, which was a survey of use of technology by the 50-plus population. And in that study, they basically said, the responders said that we do not believe that technology is designed with us in mind. So I go with that theory. Technology is not designed with us in mind, but doesn't matter. We have to use it anyway. And so there's been an explosion of business interest in training older adults on technology. So that's one factor. AARP is very useful in your work. You might want to sit down with some of the AARP research reports and get some of the commentary that the people interviewed said about the uses of technology. They were asked about AI. I know you want to talk a little bit about AI. They were asked their beliefs. But one thing the AARP report did, and that's why I'm endorsing it here, is for the first time it interviewed people who were age 80 plus. Okay, so think about that. Never surveyed before by AARP in any of their previous reports. And so what they discovered is that age group is somewhat skeptical, actually quite skeptical about new technologies, but more when asked the question if they thought that technology would help them lead a healthier life, the younger age ranges of 50 plus said it would, but when you got up to the 80 plus, they said, we don't see it. Yeah.
Really?
And so I'd say there's some training, convincing, communication to be done, because let's just be real here. There is no other way to get information now. We've run out of all of the ways. And so if you don't train older adults on the use of technology and at least build a slight amount of tolerance and enthusiasm among them, including the oldest old, they're missing out. And that's been true. In the 15 years I've been in this, the early part of it was trying to make the case for why they should become more interested. Now I'd say the argument should be why they should become better trained. And everybody who's in an organization that serves older adults needs to think about the role that training plays so that older adults can become accommodated to all these changes and use them, leverage them, because these changes are going to make, especially things like AI, they're going to make a big difference in our quality of life moving forward.
Do you think it's a possibility? Because I've run across one or two congregations who had little seminars on this. But from what I'm hearing you say, I could see synagogues, churches, etc., who have a significant amount of population who are over the age of 50, having a regularly scheduled, technology and and just saying, come, we're gonna train you on your iPad, on your computer, on your iPhone, whatever phone. This is how you do this. This is how you can access that. Because it seems to me that the pandemic was an open door to more of us getting more familiar, because that's the only way we could talk to our grandchildren, or you're in Florida, your kid may be in Phoenix, but the only way you aren't getting on a plane, but you can. So have you run across, let's say, faith communities starting to do this more and more, or companies or organizations or businesses doing more training for older adults?
Yes, I have seen examples of churches and synagogues looking into the possibility of training. I think this cannot be a part-time thought. So, sometimes people look into this and they say, well, we'll have somebody come in, once a year, and we'll do that by getting a volunteer from our congregation who used to work at a tech company and was very familiar with, websites and so forth. And we'll have him come in and do a seminar presentation. To me, that's basically saying, oh, we don't really care enough about this to bother. So what I would say is, if you're going to look at training of congregations in the use of technology, first survey them and understand what they need. And second, identify the appropriate player or players. It could be multiple players and multiple sessions over a period of time that is a commitment of the congregation, and uses, whether it's a church congregation or a synagogue, uses congregation funds like they would use them for other things like food, after services and so forth, uses congregation funds deliberately in order to raise the level of technology confidence among the attendees.
Yeah, it's just a very interesting thing that we're off on, only because as I keep thinking about it, post-pandemic, so many more people in a faith community are much more comfortable sitting at home going to services or attending adult education lectures than getting in their car. So, for example, it's wintertime and it's in the Northeast, it's horrible. And it's floods and this, blah, 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 all the stuff. Well, I want to go to the lecture, but now I'm very comfortable sitting on the Zoom machine and clicking on there and sitting back, having my glass of wine, and, I can participate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there just seems to be that door is really wide open now.
And I think the faith-based communities need to accommodate the behaviors of the congregants. If they want to be at home, they should be able to be at home. If they want to be in the building, they should be able to be in a building. And they should be invited to be in the building for specific reasons that are only available in the building and maybe not at home. For example, if you're at home, you're not likely to have a really great Q&A opportunity with somebody who's training about technology. On the other hand, if you're in the building, you have an opportunity to raise your hand and ask questions and get them answered. So
I want to, you mentioned this thing about robotics. So in a talk that I did a while ago, so on robotics, this is Sparky. Okay. Now, Sparky, I bought, I think it was for $90. And if you turn Sparky on, he nods, he barks, and was marketed as a companion for people in, let's say, nursing homes, etc. This whole area of robotics and caregiving, how overwhelmingly important is this? And this is how much of this is the beginning of a wave of unbelievable technology and expansion.
Well, it's popular.
Is it popular?
The idea of robotics and in fact, there's companies. There's one you might look into. It's called Joy for All Pets. And Joy for All Pets has robotic cats and dogs. And in fact, before my mother-in-law passed away, we got her one for herself in the nursing home. And she had dementia. And I would say in situations where the person has dementia, holding an animal like a cat that moves when you touch it and purrs when you touch it is very satisfying, and it can be very calming for people with dementia. So in that sense, it can be wonderful things. Now, that was not a very expensive product, probably in the same price range as what you're talking about.
Right.
When you start talking about, more expensive robots that actually do something, there's now, robotic vacuum cleaner that reaches out and picks stuff off the floor and brings it over to the trash. More expensive robots are interesting. They're not yet widely adopted. And I would say they won't be adopted until they reach a price point where they're affordable. There's a lot of piloting in the United States of projects. New York State, for example, the Department of Aging has put a lot of energy into piloting all kinds of use of robotics for isolated older adults. And I would say more power to them. They are pioneers, and there's other parts of the country where people are pioneers. Whether they're doing something that is broad-based and able to be adopted at large, I don't think so yet. But it's a good start, and it's a learning experience for everybody to try to understand. One of the biggest problems is you get the robotic cat or dog, unless the person has dementia. If they don't have dementia, devices like these become boring, and then they stop using them. If they do have dementia, then they have to be cleaned and maintained in such a way that they're still able to be used. That was a big problem in my mother-in-law's nursing home, how to keep the cat clean. But they can be wonderful. Anything that enables a really isolated person to interact with something in the absence of people to interact with them can be wonderful.
So that then I guess leads to the next step, and you alluded to this at the beginning about artificial intelligence. So for us lay people who may be struggling with our own intelligence, we keep reading about it. And I remember recently, I think it was a couple months ago, 60 Minutes had this whole thing on Sunday night about what's happening with robotics and artificial intelligence and changing the world of, when they're going to take over, they're building robotic soldiers. But focusing on this issue of for our generation, for caregiving, how do you see the use of artificial intelligence coming to our assistance?
There's so many ways. The big problem in caregiving, and in fact, the big problem in senior care facilities and caregiving is a shortage of labor. Okay, and
Right.
that problem, and home care industry, to go into your home and help care for you, there's a shortage of labor. And pretty soon you look around and you say, wait, there's a real labor shortage. How can we optimize the labor that we have and provide them with tools and technologies that can do certain tasks without having the person have to do them? And the good example is the check-in example in an assisted living has been used. So you've got the typical nighttime experience in assisted living is somebody walks a long hall, opens the door to see if Mrs. Smith is still asleep, okay? And then they close the door and they go back to the desk. Today, there are sensors in Mrs. Smith's room that indicate she's still sleeping. And in Mr. Jones's room next door, that he's up and about. Okay, and he may even be walking out the door. And there's wearables on the body that would indicate that he's walking out the door. So how to optimize technology to the benefit of making a more effective workforce in the care of older adults is the best use of artificial intelligence that people have been thinking about. And I just published a report about the future of AI in senior living and care. And I would say what I discovered is while it's not as widely adopted yet in senior living and care as it will be, it's going to be because there's no choice. Here's a good example that they gave me. I really like this one. Person is discharged from a hospital. And an assisted living nursing home has to decide whether to accept them because they need to be discharged to a rehab facility, which is a nursing home, right? And so with AI tools now, they can look at the electronic health record information in the hospital about Mrs. Smith and determine if her characteristics match the capability of that nursing home. What used to be a person who had to have an interaction to figure out if Mrs. Smith matched the nursing home's capability can now be done with AI, and that is being adopted now. That is a winner. That is saved, and it can be done in seconds. as opposed to the process of having a visit to the nursing home. So that's just an example. But I want to make a point about AI, because in a couple of years, we're going to stop talking about it. It is going to be part of every piece of technology you use. And when you use a device, and in fact, you could probably start to see this in your phone, when you use a device and you run some kind of software on the device and it says, would you like to know more? Or it fills out the rest of the word as you're typing, so that you don't have to think about the rest of the word. It auto-completes it for you. Or it makes suggestions based on what you just asked about. There's another thing that does the thing you just asked about. Would you like to know about that? That's all AI. And it's now part of Google search. And you're not going to have to say, I want to see the AI version of Google search. It's built in. And it's built into Word, which we write documents with. It's built into all kinds of technologies. And we're not going to call it AI in a few years. The marketing and hype about it will have passed, as has happened in every era of technology that's ever existed. And eventually it becomes just accepted and part of the technology. And nobody sits around and says, should we put AI in this? It'll be there.
So this is probably a very elementary question. So please forgive me. But so Apple is marketing of their new phones that they say has AI,
Intelligence,
whatever
Apple
it's called,
Intelligence. Yeah. Yes.
in the phone. So that's what you're talking about, right?
It's their version of AI, and it's going to be in the phone, and it's going to do some of the things I just mentioned, which is help you figure out that what you just asked for is really what you want. Make suggestions. But the most important thing with AI in the future is it's going to learn about you. That's what you want. You want it to know enough about you and your profile, with your permission, that the advice and suggestions it makes are relevant to you. And we're not there yet. Even Apple Intelligence, I think you can play around with it and you discover it doesn't really do what I just said. It's not really, because they're afraid right now. They're afraid of regulation. They're afraid of, all kinds of intimidating people who will use the device. There's lots of fear about moving the market of AI enablement. And I would call it AI enablement, not just AI, because it's going to be in everything. All software, increasingly all hardware, it's all going to have AI in it. And we're going to have to turn it off if we don't want it. Like, for example, the Alexa device in my office, I constantly have to shut the microphone because it's always listening. Stop that.
No, I did the same. I had an Alexa, and I found I got tired of it. It was like I had this sense that it was like listening to everything I was doing. And so and people would say, who are experts, they said, well, dummy, it is. I said, well, maybe I don't want it listening to everything that I'm doing.
Well, the result of it's listening right now is not necessarily super useful to you. But that's changing. And I would say within the next few years, it will be more useful to you, and you may turn the microphone back on, because it's now smart enough to know that it shouldn't just pipe up and say, would you like to buy more groceries? Would you like to... it's going to basically wait and say the right thing when you need it. And we're not there yet. We're not at saying the right thing when you need it.
Don't we have to start thinking about educating the population about, because there's a significant amount of fear involved in this. Somebody at a control room someplace is listening to everything I'm doing and knows exactly where I am and what I'm doing and where my bank accounts are and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, there is that popular fear.
There is. And there's a lot of scams against older adults now, and protecting older adults against scams. So I just published another report that is worth, at the end of this, we'll just tell folks about it. But it's a market overview of technology for aging. And it has a page or two in it about the rise of scams. Doesn't have a page or two in it about the solution to the rise of scams, because I don't think that's been... there's a lot of software you can get that help protect you and your phone against scams, but none that really understand the problem that an older adult who's not super literate on technology, how to protect them against scams. I don't think that's been... I want to say one more thing about AI before we wander off, and I'm going to give you a definition. And I think the definition is pretty important. AI is capable of predicting. That is, it makes predictions based on previously gathered data. It doesn't just make them up. It's based on previously gathered data. AI is capable of learning. That is, it learns from errors to generate new predictions, or it learns from your data to generate new guidance. And the last thing about AI is it detects patterns. So it has a machine learning capability that uses algorithms to detect patterns. And patterns are important, especially when you think about predicting disease, the likelihood of a person, for example, having a fall based on characteristics and their behaviors and what have you. So the idea of detecting patterns. So those are the three parts of AI: predicts, learns, detects patterns. And that's the stuff that's going to be built into all software. Increasingly, it's going to be built into software that's used by older adults.
Laurie, if somebody wanted to connect with you or read some of these reports, is there a website that you have, or somebody can? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I have a website. It's called ageinplacetech.com. ageinplacetech.com. And I can be reached in email by writing Laurie at ageinplacetech.com.
It's Laurie.
Correct, Laurie at ageinplacetech.com. And all of my research is on that site. It's all free. Everything I publish on that website is free, because the way I make money is through advisory, consulting, and custom material for certain clients. But it's free.
So before we run out of time, I just want to ask, because you alluded to this when you're talking about the AI. And from what I've seen in little research, this also seems to be the beginning of a new era. Wearables. So
is that an Apple Watch you have? It?
Yeah, it's an app, and there's a little lady in here who usually interrupts me when I'm giving a talk or teaching a class, and she has a delightful British accent. And she says, "I don't quite understand what you just said." So is this is a wearable? It is a wearable, right?
And it has built-in AI. There you go.
Now this is not the new generation. This is like the second
even the
generation.
Old one had
Apple
built-in
Watch.
AI. Okay. Yes.
So the wearables are the things that, like patches or something that can sensors. I know medicine is trying to do a lot of this stuff, and this is also part of something we're going to have to get used to, correct?
Yeah, and the advantage of a wearable is you can be out and about with your device on your body, and it can be used to help protect you from something. Number one thing it can help protect you from is if you fall and you're by yourself, it can be set up to alert somebody, or you can speak to it by pressing a button and say, help, and they'll send the police and the fire department. That has to be customized and thought about before anybody really lets that go. You don't want the fire department showing up all the time. But that's the whole point about wearables. Now, wearables also, there's a lot of health wearables out there in the market that can help track the changes in your chronic diseases. So if you have a particular chronic disease, whether it's diabetes or you have a heart condition, you can have a wearable that actually will know about your behavior and either alert you or a family member or a physician to some change in your behavior that's worrisome. So let's say you have Parkinson's, or you have a heart condition, or diabetes or something else. If there's some change in your condition that is worrisome, that can be set up in the device to actually alert somebody, and this requires some care, alert somebody to the change in your condition. That can be useful. Now, important also thing to remember is more and more older people are living alone. And in a time where more and more older people are living alone, the idea of wearables worn all day, all the time, is very useful, because I do know people who've fallen with no wearable and they died.
Laurie Orlov, ageinplacetech.com.
ageinplacetech.com, yeah.
Thank you very much. This is fascinating stuff. This is really the beginning of the next revolution. So I thank you for your time, and it's exciting. I just look on your face. It's exciting just have you, talk about, because you just glow with this stuff. So thank you very, very much. And continued success and good luck. To all of you, thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. We appreciate very much your time. If you'd like to make a comment or suggestion, please email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Visit the website. If you'd like to support our work, there's a conveniently located donate button on the website. Just follow the prompts. We're very, very grateful for it. Seekers of Meaning is recorded at the broadcast centers of Lubetkin Media in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a very great shout out to Steve Lubetkin, our producer. Shout out, not shut out, shout out. He's a genius. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your time very, very much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in the next Seekers of Meaning. And until that time, take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. Shalom.